Hello, I am at the Wilderness Gallery in Cradle Mountain and I'm looking at the exhibition by Jane Giblin. Jane had an artist in residence in the town of Poatina just a few months back, and this is a result of her work there. You won't see much up close yet, but one of the things she did was do workshops with the people of Poatina. I see some photography by some of the kids in town and artwork over here by some of the residents. A few reflections on the work of Jane Giblin and the exhibition that's currently at the Wilderness Gallery in Cradle Mountain. Jane is an incredibly active artist. And by active, I just don't mean producing a lot and all the time, which she certainly does. But she's active in the way she does her art. She's very physical, gestural, and strong in the way she approaches her works. Most of her works are on paper, and they're a combination of inks and charcoals and paints. And she works and works her imagery until it forms a complete unity on the canvas. So when you see her out working, which I've had the privilege of do, sitting on the ground, working a sketch, working it up, there's more coming later. And that's one of the really invigorating things about her work. It's the invigorating of being there and being in place, which is really strong in her work. You know that there's an authenticity that comes from being on location and struggling with the elements that go with that. In a real sense, her work is about Tasmanian landscape and presence within that landscape. There's a certain sense, and a very strong sense, where a lot of Jane's work is determined by the people who are present in the place with her. Jane's work, where she is placing figures in the environment, in the landscape, that are almost accidental, as if, they were passing by and we see them there as they're going about their business. But at the same time, they're intensely personal. They're people she knows and has met, has relationship with, who shares the passion that she has being out there in the Tasmanian landscape. There's something about the Tasmanian landscape which is really distinctive, and you can see this in the work of Tasmanians. It's about the light and the colour and the tones. There's a certain sense where the landscape has got this sienna green yellow tone which is not found on mainland Australia, and that combined with the deeper bushes of the berry plants up on the high plains, or even the way the imported goods has dominated the landscape of the settled areas. There's a colour and a place within the Tasmanian landscape, and Jane captures that. She captures the intense rawness of this wild landscape. There's a real sense in Jane's work from the historical. Now, she did this amazing work and this body of work from Flinders Islands, where her family, where her family has lived and for many, many decades. And her heritage is there. She knows the place intimately, and her ancestors are there. And she's done a lot of work on documenting that in an amazing book. And in that context, the historical is really important. So when you see her current work in this show, they look old. They look like they're historical figures in the landscape, that they've been there, they've always been there. Perhaps that's a sense of what it is to be Tasmanian, to be in this place and to be here and to inhabit it as if you're one, as if you're part of the landscape. And that's what she achieves in this work you'll see at this exhibition. These people are a part of where they live. They are part and parcel. They're just as lyrical as the rocks. There's no distinction between the way the body and the figure is formed to the way the landscape is formed. They're intimate with it. And that's a real strength of her work. There's this sense of intimacy that you want to get in close, that you want to actually see and experience it. There's a real sense, and I used to read a fair bit of unusual novels from other places in the world, some Japanese novels, and I remember this one about this lady in the sand dunes that's been overwhelmed by this tide of sand over time. These waves that are overtaking her house of sand, this slow creep, or the man in the sea and the struggle in that boat. There are amazing pictures of humans in the landscape. Well, there's something about Jane's work that makes those sorts of long-term human understandings of landscape real in Jane's work. She has that same struggle with the elements you see in some of those amazing novelists and those greater works. And if a picture tells 1,000 words, where there's novels in this lovely exhibition. And yet, while there's historical, there's also current and contemporary. There's a place where obviously she's working in a contemporary way with a medium that's really old, but she's bringing it into paper and works on paper in this really lovely way, which is very strong from an artistic sense, and maybe something you might see in journals. But she's informed by modernism, and she's informed by modern techniques and using things. But that's more than that. There's a sense in her work where she's recording the now as history. So, one of the works in here, this lovely blue parked person looking out over the landscape. I happen to know who that particular person is. I can recognise it from the physical gesture of the body. And so she's captured the person and put her in the landscape, but the person's dressed in a modern dressing which wouldn't be found in a historical work. So there's a certain point where her works, by describing what is now, are already historical. And in the future, they will be looked back on and go, wow, what's that era and what's going on there? And at the same time, there's, with this historicity of the work, a sense of the place. So in the landscapes, in this landscape in Poatina, where she spent her artist in residence, one of the dominating features of our landscape are the high wire transmission poles from the hydro scheme. And so when you look at those nice landscapes that she's done on location at Poatina while she was here, you will see it dominated by the electrical system, the system that dominates this world and this landscape of Poatina. And so she's not afraid of that. She doesn't take out that human manipulation of landscape. At the same time, she looks down, as I'm looking down in this direction through my other window, the plains of the northern Midlands and the patchwork quilting of the farming and the development and the struggle to dominate this land. And I think that's something that really comes out in this work. You see the struggle to dominate the land. You see the struggle of the individual person who finds their place in a strong winter setting, which in a really sense it is winter. She was sort of like early winter, late autumn when she was here. And you can see that struggle to be in the landscape. It's in the clothing, it's in the spaces of that people are described and put where they are. So in that sense, it's now and it's then, it's past and it's present, and that's all wrapped up in the way she presents her landscape. And then there's intimacy. There's lovely portraits in this show of her partner Phil, who came and visited and spent a weekend, and he sits in the landscape. And they're intimate because they're honest and they're real. They don't hide. They invite you into the relationship. She calls one my Phil. And it's that closeness, the partnership that goes. Partnership with an artist is really hard. And I know Phil's an incredible artist in his own right, in a different way, in the field of gem and silversmithing, goldsmithing. But there's an intimacy in the work of a partner who works with this incredible creative, who understands and allows her and gives her the freedom and the space to be her creative space. And that's really beautiful. And that delicacy of that comfortableness in that relationship is really clearly evident in these works. And in some senses, they become the stronger of the works because it's the surety and the rock in the sense of her current place and work. So I want to encourage you to take the time out. Sometimes we don't take time out for artists and see their works. And sometimes I find that, you have work in a gallery or watch people come into a gallery, they round the circle really quickly, look, and they don't look. They don't stop and see. When an artist like Jane has stopped in the landscape for hours in the wind and the weather and the things that are going on there, the things that go on the landscape are more than just pictures for a wall. They're abiding in the time and presence that she spent in the place and knows intimately, knows in the soul of herself, and that soul comes out in the work. So can I encourage you to head along to Cradle Mountain Gallery in Tasmania in the next 2 months, and I think it's till early December, but ring ahead if you're not sure. But she'll be there. This work is amazing, and it's worth going and sitting there and letting it fill you and understand what's going on in the space. And if you miss that, and I know we're all sort of suffering from cabin phobia, particularly if you're not here in Tasmania, we're a lot freer, fortunately. But if you've managed to get down and you've missed that, this work is going to be up from about the 15th of January through to the end of February at Poatina, at the the Poatina Tree Gallery, right next door to the Tears Tea Lounge. And you can experience the work where it was created, and you can go out for a walk along the vista of the streets around this small place called Poatina, and see the places that she describes and feel the feeling of her work. So if you miss the Cradle Mountain Gallery, come visit us in January and February and see the work here in Poatina. And just for Poatina, just for understand that the gallery's only open Friday to Sunday here in Poatina. So make it a weekend, but I guarantee the coffee shop where it's next to the Tears Tea Rooms is just superb coffee and incredibly handmade food. So bless you, have a really great day, and remember, when you go see some artwork, stop and really look, because you've got the soul of an artist. And I've got to say, Jane gives you her soul in these works.